I think we're live. Yeah, recording. Good evening, Cornerstone people. I'm Steve, one of the pastors at your church. And with me for this Cornerstone Midweek edition is my good friend, Michael Crawford. Say howdy, Michael.
Hey, what's up, Cornerstone?
I imagine Cornerstone people will hear this, and some people that you are connected to and we're not will probably wind up hearing this. So for the sake of Cornerstone people, just give us a quick reminder. Who are you, and what did you do, and how do I know you, and why are we here today?
Steve, you and I met in the early 90s. So that means I'm old, but you're slightly younger than me.
Wait a minute. What kind of math is that?
And then you had moved to the East Coast and started pastoring out here. And in about 2008, I felt a burden to come and plant in a major U.S. city, was predominantly African American. And through a series of connections with people we know, we ended up reconnecting, ended up coming out here. You guys had a group of people here in the city that were interested in the church plant. And I came out, and before you know it, 2009 rolled around. I was out here with my family, and the church led by you was helping us to plant Freedom Church. And so we've been friends for a long time.
And man, did you guys ever plant Freedom Church? Yeah, Freedom Church is a thriving, exciting place. I think something, we're getting off topic here, this is bad. Something I think that's unique about Freedom Church and what happened with you in Freedom Church is you were like a guy magnet in a good sense. You're like there were guys around the city into a more serious mode of church, into a more biblical mode of church and doctrine. And it's like they just came to you, and you have so much depth of guys in your church. Like ordinarily a church has to be 5,000 people to have the kind of depth of guys you have. So you have an incredible thing going on there. But you're no longer pastor there. Tell us what happened. How come? What are you doing instead?
Yeah, so at my time here in the city, I just became more and more burdened by the fact that I wasn't seeing macro change in the city as a result of our efforts. And so my desire is to put in a little work in that area to see some systems and structures in Baltimore City change. And so I started the Subversive Institute, which exists to equip citizens of Baltimore to change their city. And so I stepped down from my lead pastor role there at Freedom, handed it over to Pastor Jeremy Dixon. And so the time I spend, my part-time stuff now is no longer at Freedom Church, it's in Subversive Institute.
Yeah. And your real bread and butter job right now is?
State Director of Missions for the Baptist Convention of Maryland, Delaware, about 500 churches. And I work also for the North American Mission Board. So I oversee church planting in Maryland, Delaware, help churches find church planters, develop them, deploy them.
Awesome, man.
Resource them, train them, coach them.
Just this is for you and our people, but we are that close to being part of the BCMD, Baptist Convention, Maryland and Delaware. We would be in right now. I got a letter yesterday. We would invite you in now, but we have to have a meeting, and because of COVID, we didn't have that meeting, and so you're on hold until we have that meeting. But we're about to be partners with y'all, so
we'll be the better for it when you come in.
That's very kind of you. So Mike and I were talking before this meeting, and we have a lot of topics that we've kind of thought about, but the two that we're going to focus on, if we even get to the second one, we'll see. For starters here are Black Lives Matter, and then separate topic, next topic, related obviously, George Floyd. So before we go into those, there are two things I want to just say, and Mike might have some things you want to say up front as well, fine with me. But I want you all to know that any views that I express are solely my own and do not represent those of Cornerstone Community Church, her elders, her people, or her staff. These are my own views. So we're using Cornerstone's time tonight to talk about matters of current events and so on. They're my views. Probably the same for Michael, right?
Yep.
These are your views. Good. All right. Also, I just want you to know, I've really been working hard on these issues because I want to get them right. They're hard to get right because there's a lot of conflicting stuff. But the main people I've listened to are African-American scholars and journalists who seem to me to be the best, the most brilliant African-American scholars we have who weigh in on issues like this. I just want to give you their names. Coleman Hughes, Glenn Lowry, John McWhorter, Thomas Sowell, John Wood Jr., Cornell West, all really bright, maybe brilliant African-Americans. Why, you might wonder, am I learning mainly from African-Americans? Because this is such a touchy issue. Whites cannot speak, right? You get that, Mike? Yeah, you dig that?
Yep.
Like there are two white persons that I'll name here that really helped me a lot who did speak. One of them is the very brilliant Brett Weinstein. His older brother is Eric Weinstein. The two of them have the biggest brains in the country, in my opinion. Anyway, especially Eric. He doesn't mind speaking out because he was already ousted from his tenured college professorship at Evergreen College. He's already been canceled. He's already been doxxed. He has nothing to lose. So he's talking about these issues and saying, like, damn the torpedoes. Oh, it's my dad calling me. Sorry, Dad. Also, the other white guy I've learned a lot from here is Jordan Peterson. He's already braved the storm. He almost got thrown out of his tenured position at University of Toronto. He's a Harvard PhD in psychology. Really, really bright man. So those are the people who have been influencing me. Mike, you want to do any setup?
No, I'm good.
You're good? All right, man. Really appreciate it. So here we go. Black Lives Matter. Ain't this something? This whole thing going on. And by the way, I have Mike over there on that monitor, and I have some notes here. So when I'm looking over there, I'm looking at Mike. All right. Maybe I'll zoom Mike back and forth quick. What a topic, huh?
Yeah.
So George Floyd dies while in the custody of a white police officer, and Black Lives Matter comes to the fore. There are protests. I've been asked by some to say most of which are peaceful, and I guess that's true, but the media doesn't report on them much because peaceful protests don't get traction. And then there are riots, some of which are very violent, and of course the media loves that because that means views, and that means money, and that means my job is secure. I'm a reporter. But George Floyd dies, and we have riots, and six blocks or 8 blocks of the Capitol Heights area of Minneapolis are now a no man's land. It would be cool to visit there, man. I would wear a Karl Marx disguise. The big beard and everything. Yeah. I'd be like, that dude's in, man. He's Marx. Anyway, so that happened, and we have protests and riots. Last weekend in Chicago, you can see where this is going now, Mike, can't you? And you have answers already, I bet. Last weekend in Chicago, 18 black men, women, and children, several of whom were teens. One of them was a 20-month African-American baby, were killed. They were murdered by gunfire. 18. Crickets. Silence. No outcry, no mourning, no people weeping, no demand for justice, no protests, no riots. Crickets. So I know, and step in anytime you want, Mike. Cut me off anytime you want. I don't care. We're friends. I love you. I'll keep loving you. We'll work it out. But where's the mourning? If Black Lives matter, why don't those Black Lives matter, but these Black lives do matter? And the answer that I've read, the answer I'm hearing is Black Lives Matter is an organization focused on police brutality against blacks. So we're only responding to those. We're only focusing on those. In which case, I would say then your name is really misleading, because your name implies we care about all Black lives, and you really seem to be, you should rename yourself Some Black Lives Matter. Better yet, maybe you should rename yourself Some Black Deaths Matter. Because when they're alive, they don't matter because they don't help us with our narrative, with our Black Lives Matter agenda. But when one dies at the hand of a white police officer, then they matter because we can cash in on that one. That's pay dirt. Those are the ones that really do matter. So in other words, I don't think BLM is about improving the lives of Black people generally or across the board, or they'd be responding to Chicago. It's rather, you might not like this word, Mike. Maybe you will. It's about terrorism. It's about, they are terrorists. The goal is to create a huge, and I believe, absolutely false, absolutely falsifiable, to create a huge but false impression that white police are running around just looking for blacks to gun down, and that the whole thing is that white cop on black death is at epidemic proportions, when statistically and factually it is absolutely not. We might debate on that one, huh? It is just a useful tactic in a war that is not really about black lives. It's about overthrowing our system of government. It's about revolution in the USA. It's about implementing cultural Marxism or neo-Marxism. It's about a utopian dream where no one ever has to suffer. So Brett Weinstein, I referred to him a little earlier. I'm talking too long. I know it's not fair when you do that, because the other guy's like ticking up things. Can I remember to respond to that one? Can I remember to respond to that one? Make some notes, man. I'm sorry, I'm not treating you right here. I'm going too long. Brett Weinstein says, any intelligent person should be able to deduce that the lives of black people is not the priority, but rather political gains required for power. So I'm about to stop and ask you, talk. So I would say we ought to call it, to be honest. Their name is not chosen in honesty. It is subterfuge, and I don't like that. To be honest, it is some black deaths matter, namely those that empower us to overthrow government, police first. You always have to neutralize police. If you want to get to government, you got police standing in the way. Government uses police to protect themselves from uprisings. So if you can neutralize the police, now you can get to government. It's exactly what's happening in some of our cities. Government is on their knees, giving away the ship, giving away the whole boat, because of a mob who neutralized the police. So they want riots, they want terror, because that terrifies citizens into complacency, for which COVID had fully primed us. COVID taught us to be little mousy people who will hunker down, my view. But I think it ought to be called Some Black Deaths Matter, those that empower us to overthrow. All right, bro, I'm putting your picture right back in front of me. And I want to know, oh, I just lost you. What did I do? Are you still there? Michael, are you there? Because I don't see you. Now he's coming back. Hold on. Did I hit a wrong button? You back, man? Yeah, I hear you. I don't see you yet. Speaker view, gallery view. Now I see you. Well, that was an interesting little interlude.
Yeah.
Your turn, man. Talk to us. BLM.
All right. So you said a lot of things. Let's start back at the beginning.
Yeah.
All right. So, and you're right. You have like 6 or 7 talking points. So
yeah.
What was your first point?
That last weekend in Chicago, 18 died. How come there's no outcry?
Okay, great. Okay, so contrary to what some people you're reading and listening to say, they're not right. See,
What's
the
not
thing
right?
is right, because I actually live in Baltimore City, where murders are really high. Whenever people who don't live in the city say people are dying in the city and nothing's being done and no one's crying and no one's marching, that's because they don't live in the city.
No, but wait, Black Lives Matter had zero response.
Right. Well, I understand that for the organization, right? For the organization, but I'm just trying to paint a fuller picture, right?
Okay, so I know that every time somebody dies, somebody mourns.
No. It's not just that somebody mourns. It means there's organizations, there's churches, there's nonprofits that are actually doing stuff about the murder.
But we're not talking about, okay, you're painting a fuller picture, but we're not talking about what our church is doing. We're talking about BLM and where are they?
Right, okay. Secondly, the pro-life movement. They care about euthanasia?
Honestly, I don't know. Tell me.
The answer is no.
Okay.
They care about people with disabilities and special needs who are statistically way more likely to be sexually abused.
So you're saying there are other issues that could be cared about, but you have to focus on one.
So the pro-life movement
focuses on one possible, and that's what BLM is doing.
pro-life movement is with this again. You can't even argue this. The pro-life movement is about babies in the womb.
Sure.
So the other side of the argument often uses the same argument that you're using and they're using about Black Lives Matter.
And they're saying we're only focused on one kind of black violence. Right, I agree.
Right. And they're saying,
but then they need to change their name, is what I'm saying, because their name implies we care about black lives. No, you only care about black ones who die at the hands of a white police officer, and there's a reason for that. You agree?
We're getting there.
All right.
So we're getting there. I would disagree.
Oh, okay.
So according to your logic, you would also agree that the pro-life movement should change their name too, right?
Maybe. I don't really care. There aren't any marches. There's no violence. There's no trying to overthrow the government. There's not a hidden agenda.
But we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Let's just stay with this one argument. The argument is that Black Lives Matter should care about all Black lives. They don't care about all Black lives. Therefore, their name is disingenuous and they should change it. I'm following your logic.
I stand with that argument.
Let's say I agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm saying the pro-life movement only cares about lives in the womb. Therefore, they're not pro-life generically. They're pro-life specifically. So what do we change their name to?
Pro-life of babies in the womb.
Okay. So
I'd be down with that.
Okay. So to be consistent.
But let's just tell the truth. Sure.
All right. Good.
Now back to Black Lives Matter.
All right, cool. Back to Black Lives Matter. The second point is what is it about their strategic focus that is a problem? Because would you acknowledge that there at least are instances of police brutality?
Of course, and there will always be instances of police brutality. If we crush our government right now and create a whole new system of government, God help us if that happens, because we don't have bright people like they did back in the 1700s. But anyway, there will still be police brutality. It will always be here. Just like Jesus said, the poor you always have with you. You will always need police, and you will always have brutality because of human nature.
Right. But your thing is, yours is all attached, and I'm just trying to address each one not necessarily to win you, but I'm just trying to make sure I understand you on each one. So it's not that their focus is completely illegitimate. It's that it's not comprehensive enough.
No, I don't agree at all. They're giving a really false impression that this is a huge epidemic. It's a huge problem, and it is not, my brother.
Okay, so
you want to talk about that?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So if, let's say in the United States, every year, one Black man is brutalized by a police officer, just one every year.
Yes.
Is that enough to do something about that happening? Let's say it's just one.
Yes. So the idea that we could eliminate it and have fewer than one is not realistic. In fact, leading people on this say, we got the number down last year to 9 unarmed Blacks were killed by police last year. It's probably impossible that we'll ever get the number lower than that. But the concern now is that means we're going to have riots about 9 times a year, because there are going to be about 9 of those every year, and we can't eliminate that. But 9 a year is not the epidemic that we're being told to believe in. White kids in college who are marching believe that there's this massive, like, police are running out in the streets, white police are, just looking for Black men to gun down and gunning them down. That's just not true at all. There were 9 last year. Statistically, so there's 325 million people in America. There are 800,000 police officers. There are 10,000 police interactions a day. And in a whole year of that, there were 9 killings. It's not going to get better than that.
Okay, so what you just said to me as a Black man is, if I die, I can't do anything about it.
Well, I am saying there are certain facts. We're not going to do away with crime. There's always going to be crime. There are always going to be justifiable shootings where a white cop shoots a Black man. They're lawful and justifiable. We're always going to have that. So you don't believe we're going to do away with those 9, do you?
Here's what I believe. I believe right now there are systems and structures in place that enable wicked police officers and racist police officers to exist in police departments and not be held accountable. So therefore, it lends itself to a disproportionate amount of abuse towards African Americans, people of color, and white people. And I think every one of those lives really does matter. And we should do all we can to make sure that the systems aren't unnecessarily protecting officers. That's what I believe.
So why would you choose to focus on a problem that results in 9 deaths a year instead of a problem that results in 18 deaths in one city every weekend?
Okay, so
if you want to help Black people, why would you choose a real little one?
Okay, so that's a really good question for Black Lives Matter, but you never really answered my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What's your question?
So if you have 100 sheep and one leaves, do you say to Jesus, why are you focusing on that one?
Well, that's not the actual picture we have here. What we're talking
So,
about is if you have 99 who are dying over there and one who's dying over here, which do you help?
okay,
And
so,
you go for
but
the
we're talking
99 because
about,
that's 99 dying.
right. No, it's not 99 dying. It's
Yeah, it
99
is.
that are just fine.
No, we're talking about Blacks. 18 die in Chicago, 1 dies in Minneapolis.
Right.
They're dying on both sides. You need the analogy to fit. They are dying on both sides. So by analogy, you would have to have, in Jesus' story, you've got 100 sheep who are about to die and you have 1 sheep that's about to die. And I'm asking you, why are you going for the 1?
Okay. I'm asking, the reason why I'm going for the 1 is because I fear that, unlike you, I think it's worth the 1.
But you're leaving the 99. Isn't it worth the 99? Who's going to their cause?
So that's where I think. So here's the thing: you want something of Black Lives Matter that you're never going to get, and I guess you can go to your grave this, and you can be right on this. But my focus was, I asked you a specific question.
Yeah.
If 1 Black man died in America, 1 every year, as a result of police brutality,
right,
would that be enough to look into police departments to see if there are any systems and structures that need to be changed in order to possibly prevent
absolutely
it?
But
Okay, so
if
that's
but if at the same time that 1 is dying, and that's worth looking into brutality, yes.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's 99 over there who are dying. That's more worth trying to do something about. Why are you choosing the 1 and not the 99?
Okay.
Isn't it better to save 99 people than to save 1 person? If you can't do both, why not focus on the big problem?
Okay, so again, a lot of people have this problem with Black Lives Matter. I don't, brother, because I see hundreds of institutions in America, just like the pro-life movement, that are very singular focused. So
there are a lot of babies in wombs that are being killed every day. We're talking about 9 police officers in a year versus I don't know how many Blacks are gunned down in the nation in a year by other Blacks, mainly young Blacks on young Black. Why not fix the big problem if we care about Black lives?
So let me ask you a question. So one of the things I said to you earlier in the time is, have you ever considered that maybe one of the reasons why Black Lives Matter is doing this is because this is an area which really isn't being focused on?
Could be, but I think the reason Black Lives is focusing on this is because they want to stir up opposition to our government. They want to destroy our government. They want to destroy our police departments, and they need a lot of angry people to help them do that. And the best vehicle they found that will get people angry is making it huge when a white cop kills a Black police officer. By the way, when a black cop kills a Black citizen, that gets no traction. And Black cops kill Black citizens at the same frequency as white cops kill Black citizens, indicating that whites killing Blacks, white cops is not a racial issue. It's just a bad cop issue or a scared cop issue or a mistaken cop issue. By the way, you also know, don't you, you're going to respond the same way to this argument, that for every 1 African-American gunned down by a white police officer, there are twice as many whites gunned down by a white police officer.
Yeah, and I think, and this is why I said I think the police departments, I think almost all of them actually have given police officers qualified immunity, and that should change. I don't think police officers are accountable enough. And I think it facilitates an environment where bad cops can get in there and do bad things. And I think we should do
I agree.
something about it.
I agree with that.
But backwards. Let's go backwards a little bit.
But I think Black Lives Matter, and I see 99 dying over here. I'm going for the 99.
Okay, so how about this? This is something easy. Why don't you join Black Lives Matter, get in there and be the Martin Luther, reform it?
Because that ain't going to happen, and you and I both know
Well,
that.
why not?
Because they're not going to pay
You're
any
a smart
attention to
guy.
this little white boy from the country here. I missed.
You know, I mean, you're a smart guy. So, hey, do you believe that? Because you made a statement that I want to make sure I heard you right.
All right.
Because you made a statement. Basically, what you said was, when a white guy shoots a black guy, it's not racism.
Well, let me ask you. Let's go to George Floyd. Was it racism?
I don't know.
Good answer.
Yeah.
But
Do you know?
But no one knows. But a whole lot of people think they know.
Okay, that's fine. But that's
no, it's not fine. They're burning down cities because it's racism. But the scripture says I should not bear false witness. So I have to be very careful claiming that I know what happened there and that it was racism. There is no evidence whatsoever that it was racism. There's plenty of evidence that it was bad cop.
So there's no evidence right now that it was racism. That's
right.
An accurate statement.
It would be very difficult to establish that it was racism. You would have to have a past history on the cop's part where he is obviously saying racial things, or maybe he's Googling for racial slur jokes. That's
right.
a very good indicator of racial attitude.
Let me, so you want to be controversial, like we had in the O.J. Simpson trial, where there was past history?
Not sure what you're referring to.
Like we recently just had when 4 police officers were fired for using racial slurs. I think it may have been Minneapolis or Atlanta or one of these police departments.
Yes.
So my point is, you're right, but all the evidence hasn't come out yet. So I
totally
believe
agree.
We can't say it's racist. We can't say it's not racist.
We have to hold it in abeyance. We have to wait. But my point is, BLM is not waiting. And thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of people have already tried and found guilty.
Yeah. Well,
here's a good question for you. Was it a death, or was it a killing, or was it a murder? You know the difference in those three, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Was it a death or a killing or a murder, or do we even know?
So I think it was a murder.
How do you know that?
Because it did result in a death. And it was definitely a killing. And you can have first.
How do you know that?
The guy's dead.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it was a killing. He died of a heart attack, maybe.
Okay, here's what I mean. So why did he die of the heart attack?
So here's why. 50% of police, what do I call them? Of police agencies in the United States allow the use of chokeholds. Yeah. The reasoning is it's better to choke than to shoot. You got to subdue a person. You got to submit a person. Just choke him out. 99.999% of the time when you choke somebody out, they don't die. Right? In MMA, they choke people out every week. In being a bouncer at a bar, one of our pastors used to be a bouncer at a bar. That was in his BC days, before Christ days. He's a big dude. And he learned after a while not to get in fist fights, just choke them out. He said, I'd choke them out, they'd be out. I'd drag them out on the sidewalk and leave them there. And they'd wake up and they'd go home. Is it possible, I'm just asking, is it possible that what happened is, we don't know. I'm just exploring possibilities. Is it possible that this offer was legitimately within the laws of Minneapolis, using a chokehold, never expecting that this man was going to die, trying to choke him out, but he wasn't going out. He lasted a long time without going out. The man had stamina while being choked out. But then while being choked in legitimate use of law and non-lethal force, and it looks like doctors are saying he died of a heart attack. That's the best I can find. So he had pre-existing pulmonary conditions, they're saying, and the choke may have led to the heart attack, but it's the heart attack that killed him. In which case, the cop's going to be found not guilty.
Okay, so you brought up several issues again. water hose style. So I see you're excited.
Well, you have to. If I only like if I want to make a point and it has 4 components, I have to make
so
all
let
4,
me
right?
respond to them.
I am.
All right. First of all, when you refer to laws, that's exactly what my problem is. Forget about Black Lives Matter. My problem is that there's actual laws on the books where cops are able to do things, right, that I think are unlawful, right, that often lead to not just death, but often other things that I think are not lawful. And that's why I would argue for some systemic change in police departments. But secondly, you know, if you put someone in a chokehold, if I went over and got in it with my neighbor and put him in a chokehold, okay, and he died,
yeah,
you know what that's called legally?
I'm gonna guess that would be involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah, or if his lawyer tried me, he might try to pull me up on 3rd degree, right?
Yes, but it's different with a police officer because part of their job is using force.
Right, and again, we just disagree here. I think we could be clear on that. I think we could address that. I think the system needs to be a little bit more fixed on that.
Yeah.
So I think the reality of it is that if you use force in that case, and by the way, it's interesting because this is the first time, one of the first times, okay, that we see a guy for this extended amount of time leaning on his neck. And you used the phrase like, yeah, he was lasting a long time. He didn't go out.
Yeah, people usually pass out faster, just being objective.
Right. And he was on his stomach, handcuffed, and he was still applying pressure to his neck. You're fine with that?
So we do not know, I don't know, you don't know, and most people don't know, what had just transpired before the little short video we've all seen. There's another video that has not been made public so far as I can tell. And apparently in that video, we were told that about that video, there was a lot of resisting the police officers. And he was still not submitting on the ground. He's still fighting against them. He's trying to get up. He's trying to get out of this. He needed to just go limp and say, uncle, but he didn't. He's resisting the police officer, Romans 13. Those who resist need to fear.
Right. So resisting police officer is a death sentence. It's judge, jury, and sentence.
Well, see, it may be, because here's the deal. Let's go to the guy that grabbed the police officer's taser, pointed at it, and pulled the trigger. What was his name? I can't think of his name right now. I'm 65. What's his name? You can't either. Ha ha. You're 55. So people are saying, well, that was terrible. He wasn't armed. He only had a taser and all that. Look, if he had tased that cop, what do you think was going to happen next? He's going to take that cop's gun and shoot him 5 times.
Maybe.
So if
I'll use your logic, maybe.
So if George Floyd had gotten up, what was going to happen next? Was he going to be submissive, or is he going to try and get one of their guns? And they weren't expecting to kill him. They were expecting, I'm just arguing, I don't know. Maybe he was trying to kill him. I don't know. But we don't know. Maybe he was just trying to do what a whole lot of police have to do, is choke him out rather than kill them. But while choking him out, he died. We don't know.
So you're good with choking him out with a knee on the neck?
Well,
with him on his stomach? I
think that's done a lot and doesn't result in death. So I don't know. I'm not an expert on that.
But you're good with it because it's done a lot and doesn't result in death. You're good with it.
Well, I'm definitely good with the use of force. You have to use force if you're a police officer, or you're not going home to your wife.
Okay, so
right? They want to stay alive.
Well,
you have to allow them to use force.
But the citizens want to stay alive too, Steve.
Right.
So my question is
so the citizens
you're not sure right now
police.
whether you're good with it, but you're good with the general principle of force to protect themselves.
I'm good with choking out. Yes, I think it's a very kind and beneficent way of dealing with somebody who's resisting. Rather than shooting him, you just choke him out. Now he's submitted.
All right. Yeah. We'll just.
Yeah. I mean, they're talking now about we're gonna make it illegal to choke somebody out. We're gonna make tasers illegal. All the cops are gonna have left then is their gun. So it's going to go straight to gun all the time. Bad idea. Let them choke.
Kind of like it's doing now. A lot it goes to gun now.
Actually, not a lot. Last year, it only did that with white on black 9 times.
By the way, let me ask you another question. So
that's not a lot.
The statistics that you have with black, white, shootings.
Yeah.
You're good with those statistics?
Well, that's a loaded question. Of course, I'm not good
Well,
with
I
any
mean,
death on the planet. But are the statistics what we're being led to believe? We're being led to believe that there's this epidemic of these horrible cops gunning down black men. That is not the least bit true. That is totally falsified. BLM wants you to believe that because they want to overthrow the government and they need to get rid of the cops first.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room, because it keeps coming up. No matter
this
where
is
we go,
gonna
we
be-
end up at this lake.
This is going to be good.
Overthrowing the government.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are aware that America was founded on overthrowing a government.
Oh,
that it
I
was
know
a
where this is
part
going.
of.
Yeah. Can I answer, or
Yeah.
do you want to? Do you need to tell? I know what you're saying.
Okay, so
Yeah.
how do you feel about that?
Yeah, and we have in our Constitution, we have the right to overthrow our government. But I don't want these people overthrowing our government because I don't trust them 1 second with what they're going to do instead. And I think what they want to do
Wait,
instead.
can I stop you right there? Hold on.
Okay. All right, let me write something down.
Okay. I love what you just said. You said, I know it's in our DNA. I know it's in our Constitution, but I don't trust these people.
Right.
Right? I don't trust these people to do it.
Who are mainly white people, by the way.
That's fine. You
Who
say,
are
I don't
using
trust
black people.
these people.
Right.
Would you acknowledge, even though you would strongly agree, that there are people in our country that understand that America was founded on this principle, put it in its Constitution, and they're looking at guys like you and maybe me saying, and I don't trust you people to run our country.
Well, I wouldn't trust me to run the country, or you.
Right? They're looking at guys like you and Soul and Candace and all these people and saying, we don't trust you guys to run the country.
Here's what I mean. Here's why I don't trust them.
Is not great.
Here's why I don't trust them, and I think you should care about this. You were saying in your talk on Sunday night, which was a pretty bold talk, by the way. One of the things I love about you, brother, is that you're an independent thinker and you're not scared to stand up and say what you mean. I didn't agree with you on much of anything, but I respect you for it. So you were talking about Marxism and that the Bible doesn't authorize any one form of government. Totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, when the church did its best in the first century, what was the form of government? It sure wasn't United States capitalism and democracy and all that. So I agree. The Bible does not underwrite or justify the existence of any one kind of government. But the one being proposed here is just Marxism. Now, here's the deal. We should ask, has humanity ever tried this before, and how did it go? And I'll tell you how it went. In 100 years of Marxism, there have literally been 100 million deaths due to Marxism, right? Chairman Mao had the Great Leap Forward. Hundreds of thousands of people died. Stalin tried it. Hundreds of thousands of people died within months and then over years. So I think we can say the thing they have in mind has been tried and tried and tried and tried, and everywhere it's resulted in a bloodbath. Let's not try what they're saying. That's where I am.
All right. So
there's historic reason not to go with BLM and their desire for a Marxist government.
All right. Number one, I don't prefer Marxist government either. I think BLM is exaggerated when it comes to political stuff. I said this in many of my talks. I've said this. I don't agree with everything with BLM, their moral stuff, and especially Marxism and their approach. I disagree. However, I'm glad you brought up Marxism and its history.
Yeah.
Because America's got a little bit of history too, Steve.
Yeah. I don't think we have 100 million died in 100 years.
Oh, really?
Due to our government.
So now you're not pro-life. You don't count abortions.
Okay, you got me.
Well, say that again.
Okay, you got me.
So, yeah. Okay.
That was fair.
So if we're gonna take a Marxist entity and say, look, this is what happens under it. Then we've got to look at what America is. We got to take it all and say, hey, some good, some bad, but we've got to own the whole thing.
Here's a difference. Here's a distinction I think you're not making. Maybe you don't got me. I take it back for a moment.
Yeah,
let's see if I can make it stick. So in instituting Marxism, the problem was to make that happen, you had to kill a lot of people. Chairman Mao said that'll be a great leap forward. We just have to kill a lot of people, and then we'll be in the utopia, which they never got to. It didn't work.
Right.
What you're talking about is, while not changing a form of government, some people have died due to a law, abortion laws. I don't think we're talking about which kind of government is safe for people and which kind of government tries to kill people, and you're responding with, there is a law that we have that allows killing babies. I don't think we're talking about the same thing.
We are, because the founding of this country, the history of the United States, in order to establish the United States, lots of people had to die. Lots of people had to be subjugated. Lots of people had to be brutalized.
How many is that lots?
What?
Give me a number. How many is that lots?
What did you say? 100 million?
Yeah.
So here's what I would say. I don't know the number, but I know the approximate number of slaves, lynching, American Indians that were here, and the history of the United States, at least for the first couple hundred years, is not a pretty picture of this beautiful utopia of capitalism and
nobody thinks it's a beautiful utopia of capitalism, bro. Nobody thinks it's a utopia.
Yeah. So, I mean, but the bottom line is, we find ourselves arguing for a form of government and then having some sort of revisionism about what this country was, what it actually did, what it continued.
So you're saying what happened in this country is the same as what happened under Lenin and Chairman Mao?
Absolutely not. But
good,
what I would say,
because they were bloodbaths. So I don't want to try their bloodbath here.
Okay, but I don't think anyone would want to try their bloodbath. But I don't think any sane human would want to try what America did at its inception.
Actually, at its inception?
Yes.
What did America do at its inception that was horrible? You mean American Indians?
Did you really just ask that question?
I think I did. It's being recorded.
All right. Well,
what do you mean? What did America do? I think at its inception, America wrote up documents that created the greatest government the earth has ever seen.
Okay.
And I think Marxism, by comparison, created a system that was a total bloodbath from its very inception. In 4 months, millions of people were dead. Same with the French Revolution, by the way. I don't trust these guys any more than I trust being in a French Revolution. We are looking at the start of a French Revolution, my friend. It's going to be a bloodbath.
All right. So
you better get a gun.
Well, I know who to get one from. I know a guy who has lots of guns, so I may not even need one myself.
I'll come and get you, bro.
He's like the Terminator.
I'll come down there in my truck and pick you up.
I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So for you, a lot of this is boiling down to your view of America.
Okay. Your perspective?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's my perspective. You just said the greatest, rephrase that. What did you say about America?
Greatest nation ever, greatest form of government ever.
Okay.
So all those black scholars that I read their names earlier, they would all say that. They all absolutely believe that.
Well, hey, you know what? It's America, and they have the right to believe that.
They're America's best black scholars, and they believe it's the greatest form of government ever, certainly with many problems, because it's the fallen world. They're always going to have problems. The poor you will always have with you.
Yeah. By the way, if you're going to correct me on the 99 and the 1, I have to correct you on the poor, because there's a difference between saying we're always going to have problems and the poor you're going to have. Last time I checked, being poor is not a moral conundrum, right? It's really not. It's a little bit different than injustice and systemic racism and all those types of things.
So here's why I'm using the poor, because having poor with you comes from our fallenness. Other things are going to come from our fallenness equally, and that is racism and murder and whatever else. So I'm using that as a case for many. This is what fallenness does.
Right. Gotcha. Right. So I think America is a cool nation. I wouldn't say a great nation. I wouldn't say great.
You know what? I think most every American I've ever known would totally disagree with you there.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about being in America.
Well, let's hang on to it, because we're losing it. We're losing free speech.
But here's the thing. I think one of the things that I brought up that you probably disagree with me on, but I think you're wrong on this. I think I'm right on this.
All right.
Is that I think, and you said this up front, that there are issues that we can be very passionate about, extremely passionate about, doggedly passionate about. But unfortunately, they're not really issues of morality, direct morality, but indirect morality. They're issues actually of Christian liberty, including how one sees the country.
Oh, totally agree. That's why we're able to have this talk.
Right. So like, I mean, there are people who think America is the greatest nation ever on the face of the earth.
Mhm.
I think Israel would disagree, and they probably disagree pretty strongly.
Actually, I
Yeah.
think they would say America is certainly one of the greatest nations ever.
Hey, you know what? Let's go there, by the way. Let's go there.
Okay.
Why would
But there's a few
Israel
things I
say
want to
that?
circle back to soon,
Yeah, why would Israel say that America is one of the greatest nations? Why would they say that?
because they appreciate our form of government and understand that it's beautiful compared to other options. Right?
Yeah. I wonder if it has anything to do with our historic support of Israel as an ethnic people group.
Pretty much everything always has numerous things to do with it.
Yeah, and of our amazing amount of resourcing Israel in the 1940s.
Sure.
And supporting them with military and infrastructure and billions of
Helping them be a
dollars
nation again, yeah.
and armies to establish them as a people.
And having
get them
premillennial
up.
American Christians
Huh?
and having
What?
premillennial American Christians thinking that they're the most
Yep.
important thing on the earth.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
And boy, it's amazing to me that a nation that essentially hardly existed in 1948, some 72 years later, could be a superpower.
Yeah.
You
what's
can
your
have
point?
hundreds of thousands of people that
What's
were
the problem with Israel? You don't
Huh?
sound very happy with Israel. What's the point?
Oh, no. I love it. I think it's epic.
You mean
I think it's
Israel?
awesome. I think it's great.
You mean Israel?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I think it's great. I'm just saying that it's just amazing to me what can happen in 72 years if nations and a government like America really gets behind you, like they did Israel. It's amazing. In 72 years, you can be a superpower.
So the point you seem to be making there is that America is unbelievably powerful, can help you become a superpower fast. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and it could do, and it's done that with lots of people groups too.
Yes.
It's pretty good, except for African Americans. Never really done that with African Americans.
Well, all of the African Americans I quoted earlier would totally disagree with you and would say, the plight of African Americans since 1960, and they were alive. Many of them were alive in 1960, and they're saying the situation for African Americans then and now, we are in a different country now compared to the country we were in then. It's gotten that much better. It's not all where we want it to be yet, but it's getting better.
Great. So let me ask you a few questions. Sure. So on that point right there. So since let's just take it from 60. Okay. So we're talking about 60 years, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in 60 years, in your mind,
it's 80
with
years.
with a people group,
no, you're right.
What is realistic to happen in 60 years?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that, but the point is a lot has happened. Can we make more happen? Yeah, I'm all for it. But I think you're barking up the wrong trees to try and make it happen. If we want to make it happen, we need to go to the 99, not the 1. We need to ask, what are the big problems that African Americans are facing in America? And let's get the force of our entire government behind this, and let's attack them and fix them and make them better.
Right.
I'm 100% for that.
Oh, so you would be 100% for the government of the United States completely resourcing even the Chicagos, the Baltimores, the Detroits?
Absolutely, I would.
Oh, okay. So we're on the same page. I'm not against that. We
want the same thing, but I think you're barking up the wrong tree. So we have different diagnoses, so we have different cures. My diagnosis is the problems that you think are the problems are not the problems. These are the problems over here. Let's take the entire nation. Let's convince our entire nation. Let's elect presidents and vice presidents solely for the purpose of, let's task them with fix our cities, make life good for our African Americans. That's what we want you to do. We're willing to spend cash on it. We're willing to get behind you. I would vote for that tomorrow.
So how are we not on the same page? I'm confused. I started the Subversive Institute for Baltimore City. How are you saying to me that anybody can go to my website? If anybody goes to my website on Subversive Institute and they click on solutions and they see the first 11 solutions are all around violence in the city by Baltimoreans, for Baltimoreans to deal with Baltimoreans. And the first 7 solutions deal with really dealing with crime in Baltimore, black on black crime. Right. I'm the wrong guy to talk to. Yeah. You got to talk to somebody else.
So here's where we differ. Let me just say first, I've been wanting to say this for the past 15 minutes. I keep wanting to get, and then we get to something else. I certainly believe there is a need for police reform in the United States, and I would support it. I think the two biggest problems there are, one, there's a lack of accountability. Very often it's internally accountable. We police our own police. Not You got to have independent, accountable to the people out there. So I think accountability is one problem. And the other thing is, we might disagree on this. There's a big defund the police movement. No. I'm for massive more funding police, but here's how we spend that funding. I like Jocko Willick's idea on this. You know who he is? Navy SEAL dude, Jocko Willick. He says, he talks about how we train SEALs. And they train and train and train and train and train and train. So when they're in a situation, they know exactly what they're going to do. They know what they're not going to do. They can psychologically handle it. They've been trained to psychologically handle the moment, et cetera, et cetera. Our average cops get just about zero training. Jocko suggests that they get one full day every week, 20% of their time on the job. They're doing training. They're running scenarios. They're repeating them. They're getting psychological counsel, because a whole lot of the problem when a cop goes bad, his wife just divorced him. He's got psych issues. He's angry. They got to be able to deal with that. I'm all for that. But I don't think the problem is anywhere near as a lot of young people in our nation and even older people are being led to believe. I think we're being fed a false line. The numbers just aren't there. It's not a huge problem. There are way huger problems that I would attack. What I would want to attack is, we got to bring jobs back to our cities. Incidentally, we have a president who's kind of been trying to do that, and was doing a pretty good job of it. Then COVID hit, but all the jobs left starting in the 1950s because of corporations that wanted more money, so they sent their jobs overseas with just wanton carelessness for the people in our cities and left them high and dry. There's no more jobs. And where there's no jobs, there's poverty. And where there's poverty, there's crime. And where there's crime, there's police presence. And where there's police presence, there's going to be brutality. And here we are. We need jobs. We need freaking jobs, and we need schools. I'd be very willing to invest. This is redistribution. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's not like welfare redistribution. It's let's fix these systems. But I don't think it's the systems that are mainly holding African-American people down. They contribute, but they're not the main thing. Well, maybe these are in a sense systems. I think the biggest problems are, I'm talking way too long again, aren't I? You got me on a roll, bro. The biggest problems are the breakdown of the African-American family in the inner city. 75% of young men do not have a dad, and they turn to the neighborhood and get involved in crime. I think probably the other biggest problem is lack of jobs. When there's no job present, then what do? Your job becomes being a criminal, because you can make some money being a criminal.
So you just said you don't think it's the systems and structures, and then you just cited systems and structures.
I said, well, then these might be systems, but when you're talking about systemic problems, no one ever talks about the breakdown of the family under that heading. No one I've heard.
But you say, again,
so it's not one of your systemic problems.
With all due respect,
thank you,
you're not right. There are plenty of people in cities like the ones you love. You love Baltimore City. That's pretty obvious. You do.
I do.
That are working on those issues and care about. And we would actually say that family is a system that needs to be fixed.
Well, I agree.
Internally,
it's
first.
It's just not on your list of systems. It's not on. When we talk about the systemic injustices, family's never on that list. So that's why I said.
But you're wrong.
It is on that list?
Bro.
I've been looking at a lot of people's lists, and I ain't seen family on there.
Bro.
That's not the narrative right now. It's police, it's whatever.
Steve, but that's one of the things where we just disagree. I feel like you're the dog where the bike came by and you just started chasing it. And we're all yelling at you trying to say, I see why you're chasing it. I'm not going to invalidate why you're chasing it, all the reasons why you're chasing it. But we're trying to get you to come back home and say, brother, if you go on our manifesto in Subversive Institute, the 7th systemic issue is family dysfunction. It's right
So I am not responding to you and the Subversive Institute. I'm responding to BLM and the whole climate of what's going on out there and the whole agenda of what's going on out there. And their agenda is not at all, let's help Black families. In fact, if you go to BLM's website, and I'm sure you have, and I have too, one of the things they're doing is redefining the family and saying, it's fine the way the families are in the inner city. No, it's not. That's a major contributing problem. We need dads who help young men to be responsible citizens and not criminals.
Yeah, so again, I think where we would disagree on BLM is that I think you're more with the scribes and Pharisees. Can any good thing come out of BLM? And I'm like, there's a few good things that can come out of BLM. And there's a lot of things that I would say I disagree with. But meanwhile, I think the real application for people who are going to watch this, by the way, the real application for people who are going to watch this is it'll make them think, it'll make them get emotional, it'll make them do all that. But at the end of the day, we're each faced with a question, and that is, okay, so what am I going to do about this? Here's what I would suggest. And you heard me say this, and maybe you disagree with this. I would suggest differentiating. I would suggest that an analysis of BLM, no matter where you land on it, is great. But what's even better is to put your hand to the plow and decide that from this day forward, you're going to act and behave and think and emote in such a way that it results in the difference in African-American communities. And that could be a lot of different things, right? There's not one size fits all, right? You agree with that? Like, because at the end of the day, we've sat here and we've debated on American police and reforms. And I think you view us as way more in disagreement. I think we have more commonality, because you're viewing it from a BLM standpoint. I'm viewing it from my crop standpoint.
I'm differentiating between you and BLM, and I'm
exactly.
talking about BLM.
Right. Here's what I'm saying.
And you're responding, but Steve, you and I agree. Well, yeah, we do, but we don't agree about BLM.
Right. But here's what I'm saying. But Steve, in a lot of ways, I don't really care about BLM because I live in a city that's disproportionately impacted by Black on Black crime versus white on Black crime. So what am I doing? I'm dealing with Black on Black crime. So people want me to go spend endless hours of debate and energy defending or supporting BLM or explaining BLM. And I'm like, last night, 2 people got shot in Baltimore. Who are their mothers? Who are their fathers? Can they bury them? How can we change that? So all I'm saying is, I'm not saying it's not a worthy conversation. I'm saying at the end of the day, if you're walking down the road and you see someone in the street, I hope, metaphorically, you're not so distracted by what's going on in the nation and the larger arguments that you walk past what's right in front of you, right? And when you live in communities where that stuff is right in front of you, in a lot of ways, you don't really have those options in a lot of ways.
Totally agree. What this conversation has been about, I think, it's been about a lot of things, but it's been about BLM went hyper mode when we had a police shooting, white on black, not shooting, I'm sorry, it was the knee to the neck. They do the same over police shootings. If we could end all occasions of police shootings, white on black, all occasions of police choking out and dying, and the guy dies, white on black, if we could end all of those in all of Baltimore and every city, Detroit and New York City and everywhere, would that change things? Would that make the cities wonderful places to live?
No,
that's really not the change the cities need. That's micro. That's a teeny little thing. But right now, there's a huge national interest in stopping these police shootings, as if they're the big thing. This is what I'm responding to. People, those of you who are listening, we're being fed a story here. They are not the big thing. And if we could end them all, it's not going to help Baltimore hardly at all. Let's help Baltimore, and I'm willing to see the entire U.S. nation and government get behind it. My fear is that the U.S. people wouldn't get behind it because they'd view it as redistribution and they'd kill it. But I'd be willing to see the whole government get behind. Let's fix our cities. Let's invest in them and create beautiful places. I'm all for that.
Hey,
I care.
Hey, a few things. So let's do a little theological work real quick.
All right.
Just to buttress a few points. Then I know you got to get.
Okay.
So Israel.
Maybe we'll do a part 2 on this, huh?
Yeah, we should.
You want to?
Israel and Egypt, because you're gonna debate me on this one. I know this one. Israel and Egypt. So when Israel left Egypt, okay,
They took spoils.
yeah, but not enough to sustain them.
So they needed manna. Yeah.
And then they walked into a promised land.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, don't you think?
Well, I don't know where you're going with it, so I'm not going to answer.
I just think it's interesting that these million-plus slaves came out of slavery, wandered for 40 years. God had to miraculously provide for them, and then he brought them into a land that had all this infrastructure, houses, moats, farms, trees,
Yeah. What's your
everything,
point?
so that they could become a global superpower really fast.
What's your point?
I just think that's very interesting.
I'm not getting the point.
Oh, well, let me keep going. And
Okay.
then when Israel was slaves in Babylon for 70 years, they were freed and they came home to Jerusalem. And they did not get that kind of support. And they never again became a superpower under Babylon, Medo, Persia, Greek, and Rome, all the way up through 1940 something, where they're persecuted. And then afterwards, 1948, they're relocated into their land. And now 70 years later, they're a superpower. What's the difference?
Interesting history. Just tell me what's your point, because I'm not getting it, bro. I'm sorry.
The point is that when people are subject to something for hundreds of years, which destroys every infrastructure and system and structure in their thing,
yes,
as a general rule, it takes more than 60 years to get them up and running, which is what your friends that you love, who are PhDs, who are the smartest Black people ever to live, are saying. They're saying in 60 years, notwithstanding the moral culpability, in 60 years, America changed, which we could argue that's not completely true. But in 60 years, an ethnicity that was oppressed systemically, in 60 years, boom.
Boom what?
Boom. A major contention is African Americans should be way farther along. There's no such thing as systemic injustice. That's a myth. The country's been totally different. You even said it. We live in a completely different America. 60 years.
That's what those leaders said. Yeah.
That's what they said.
They're just saying, listen, Pastor Stan, I pastor with Stan. You know Stan. You love Stan.
Yeah, I love him.
One of my favorite men on the planet. I love him. He was telling me, I don't know why. It wasn't this way in Westminster when I was a kid, but when he was a kid around here, if you went to the movie theater, Blacks had to sit up in the back, up in the balcony. If you want to go to a restaurant, certain restaurants are not open to Blacks. It ain't like that no more. So it's gotten better in some ways. That's what they're saying. It's a different world.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not saying it's all better. They're not saying everything's fixed.
Yeah. All I'm saying is from a theological point of view, just something to chew on. You might not chew on it long. Isn't it interesting how fast Israel succeeded in two historical occasions when they had help? Isn't it interesting how slow and how they made no improvement from the time of Babylon? They were oppressed people for thousands of years.
Yeah.
They never made it back up. In other words, this theory that you can start from the bottom as a slave and climb your way up is true for individuals, but not for groups.
I totally agree.
So to your point,
several responses.
We would agree that, if you're going to marginalize and oppress people, they're probably going to need a little bit of help collectively.
Oh, I totally agree. And that's why I'm saying I would be happy to see the power and resources of the entire U.S. government get massively focused on and behind, let's finally fix our cities. Basically, what our leaders are saying is, I don't give a crap about these cities because they're doing nothing.
I agree.
Right? They're doing nothing.
I agree, 100%.
And I think that's outrageous.
Yeah.
These are some of the biggest problems in our nation. And you said some good might come from BLM. I totally agree with that. And here's some good. It might pressure government enough to finally get off their lazy butts and say, all right, we got to address this problem. But I don't trust the present government at all. So one of the guys I mentioned in the setup, can you stay a few more minutes?
Yep, I got 7 minutes.
Oh, man. One of the guys I mentioned in the setup, Brett Weinstein, has just proposed. He went on Joe Rogan and proposed, and he was on Tucker Carlson last night and proposed that we do this. He'd like to see us for this election. He doesn't want us to reelect He doesn't want to elect any of the present candidates because they're not going to fix these problems. And I think he's probably right. He wants to elect this guy who was a Navy admiral. I forget his name, but I heard a speech by him. He was awesome. And he wants to elect this guy who was one of the Democratic candidates. One is middle right, and one of them is center left, center right, and center left. And they would be president and vice president. And then in 2 years, they flip-flop, and the other one's president and vice president, or in 4 years, they flip-flop. And a major part of their focus that we would task them with is fix this problem in America. That's what you're hired for. That's your job right now. Fix these things. Man, I would dig that. I don't think they have a chance in hell of getting there.
I agree. I don't think we should have two-term presidents. I think it should be one term. I don't think Congress and Senate should be paid because
I agree with that.
So hey, but
It's
think
horrible.
about. I want you to think about something though. And
Yeah.
you heard me say this, and maybe you disagree with this. You know why I think it's so hard to fix this problem?
Why?
Because it was set up to never be fixed, brother.
Oh, that might be. So listen.
The systems and structures were set up to perpetually keep people in a place. So when you go to overturn them, it's a lot of work, and it's sacrificial, and it's really hard, and it's way easier to just go, here's a grant, here's $1 billion, it's hard to really get in there and do the dirty work you're calling for people to do. I'm supportive of that. It's really, and also, by the way, also, it's possible that just like anything, and you may agree or disagree, now he's talking about getting these two people in place. I would be for something even more radical. Like our government is amendable. Like we could change our government.
Sure.
Like the beauty of our Constitution is not in its
Remember,
static.
I agree with that. I just don't want what these folks are proposing.
That's fine.
Because history tried that, and it was a bloodbath.
But the point of the matter is, so my contention is this, okay? I believe that things in countries, in places like America, can become so systemically infected that the only way they change is social revolution.
So now, that's the current narrative, but I do not agree with you at all there.
Okay, so we disagree. I believe the only way America changes is if we have a social revolution. It's the only way it's going to change. Now, I'm not for the Black Lives Matter version of social revolution, but I do believe whether it's Baltimore City, because the president and the mayor and the city council and congressmen and senators, listen, brother, this is what I believe. I actually believe that the systems and structures are designed in such a way that now watch this, good congressmen and women, good senators, and potentially even, though I don't know that we've had one in a while, maybe a good president, even with good intentions, can't change the country because the systems and structures will resist it.
Well, let's wait and see if Brett's plan works.
It won't.
But I think there might be a little bit too much imagination here that way back then there were these systems put in place and they're still there and that's what's hurting us. No, back then there was no system put in place to destroy the Black family. In fact, the Black family stayed very intact until the 1950s and into the 1960s, and there are different theories. We don't have time to go into what broke down the family. But my contention is a major, major, major cause of Black woes in cities is the breakdown of the family. That didn't come from back then. That happened in the 1950s and 60s. And some of it's due to mass incarceration.
At another time, we need to visit that because your statement's not correct. Because your statement's not correct. The systems and structures were designed to destroy the Black family. And we can talk about what happened in the 50s and 60s as if it was like this plume dust that fell, or was it something constructed? We'll talk.
It's very demonstrable. But hey, can I keep you 2 more minutes?
Yep.
So one of the worst things that ever happened to our nation was we brought slaves to our shore. And then maybe one of the next worst things that ever happened was the North won the war. That's good. And released slaves. That's good. But gave them nothing. You agree, right? The problem is
1,000%.
Yeah. The problem is you just turn people loose who have no or little education, no resources, no land. They needed land. Now, I don't know if you know this, you probably do, but there was a massive effort by Lincoln's government to provide them with land. And they took coastal lands from the Carolinas all the way down into Florida, that entire coastal section, and like, I don't know what it is, 50 miles inland. And they gave that to African Americans who had been slaves, and they started farming it. They started building their culture there. The next guy elected president was a Southern sympathizer, and he killed it. He pulled the plug. He said, no more, you're all kicked out. And so now here we are again. We have no land, no resources, no nothing. And we're going to head into cities where we might find jobs. And here we are. And the jobs have now left the cities, and the family broke down. I want to see it fixed, bro.
Systems and structures are just like everything we talk about, Steve. You can exaggerate them and make them more than they are, right? I can make systems and structures responsible for why my Reese's aren't fresh and my In-N-Out was stale, but I can also diminish it. I believe personally, as a nation, it's in our DNA to diminish systems and structures, and really not be honest about how much they have contributed. Then I think people come along and they exaggerate it, and there becomes no individual responsibility, which I think is an exaggeration. But it doesn't matter how hard you were working in Egypt. If you were a Jew, you weren't going anywhere. The systems and structures were going to keep you there.
Yeah.
And
so
all
I
I'm
agree with
saying
that.
is,
I was just telling you,
1865 emancipation. You just explained that meant and what I'm saying, 100+ years later, we say now America's set on the right course. We got to come back another time and talk about that and the implications of all that, because it's there.
Yeah, we could keep talking forever, couldn't we? We got to shut down. Oh,
Yeah,
what time is it, man? What time is it?
8:45.
Okay, yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Mike. Everybody,
Thank
this
you.
is Mike Crawford, my bro. Do you want me to send you the link here so you can share this with anybody you want to?
Sure.
Show them all how dumb Heartland is?
Well, I'm sure people are going to be upset with both of us in this climate.
Yeah, huh? This is a little risky.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. I love you guys.
All right, talk to you. Bye-bye.
Take care.